According to the EPA, there are hundreds of thousands of abandoned gas stations across America. Why have so many failed while the country is still so dependent on gasoline? One big reason is that the demand for gasoline has continually changed over the decades. When automobiles first appeared on our streets, gasoline was just a useless byproduct of distilling kerosene. It was sold by the can at general stores or blacksmith shops. When the demand increased, oil companies began selling gasoline from storage tanks. In 1905, the newly invented gas pump began showing up on the sidewalks outside stores. The first dedicated off-street filling station was opened in Pittsburgh in 1913. Others followed, and competition began growing between gas stations. Owners expanded their offerings, selling batteries, motor oils, and tires. Then, in the 1920s, they began offering repair services. Up to that time, automobiles, like the Model T, were fairly simple, and owners were expected to do their own repairs. But newer cars were more complicated and required skilled mechanics. So throughout the 1920s, gas stations were installing service bays and grease pits in their buildings. They would also attract customers through neon signs, which had just been invented. Or they built their stations in curious shapes, many of which have now been lovingly restored. By the 1930s, gas stations were usually staffed by uniformed attendants who, when summoned by a bell as your car arrived, would fill up your tank, wash your windows, and check your oil and tire pressure, and give you free road maps. And, just as important, have a clean restroom awaiting you. The future looked bright for these service stations. In 1946, the Post recommended that returning war veterans consider running their own gas stations. But big changes were ahead. In the 1960s, gas stations started offering lower prices if motorists would pump their own gas. The trend became widespread in the 1970s after gas prices rose because of the oil embargo. People started seeking the cheapest price, which was often at the self-serve stations. Another big change was increasing fuel economy. The big cars of 1970, on average, ran 13 miles to the gallon. With today's smaller, fuel-efficient models, the mileage is over 25 miles per gallon, according to the EPA. And it's 0 for electric cars. We don't need as many gas stations because cars travel farther on a tank full of gas, which reduces the need to stop as frequently for refills. Gas stations are also closing because of rising property costs, especially in cities, where they simply aren't profitable enough in high-rent areas. They became even less profitable when they had to close down their garages. Engines have become more complex, and servicing isn't possible without the car maker's proprietary software. So station owners have filled in their grease pits and taken down their car racks. Shrinking demand and profitability are two of the reasons why 40% of the gas stations of 1970 are now closed. Those that remain open stay in business by providing the one vital necessity all motorists need: snacks. This video is brought to you by the Saturday Evening Post Digital Archives. For only $15 a year, you can explore 200 years of American history in the Saturday Evening Post online archives. Subscribe today.